Hello, everyone. Again, I am Del Hungerford, along with Zoe, who this is her favorite hangout spot, so you'll find her a lot in my videos. Again, I'm with Healing Frequencies Music, and one of the things I have been doing is going back and taking various blog posts and then making video presentations out of them, because I understand that different learning styles lend themselves to reading and or listening, or a combination of both. So today I'm doing the second in the series of the Hebrew letters and the musical frequencies of those Hebrew letters as they are associated with tuning. The first series, I started with the harmonic series, explaining what all that was, and today the focus will be on tuning and temperament. So I'm going to share my screen for a moment. Whoops, I need to go back here first. First things first. So share the screen. This is the blog post I'm referring to. Today is the musical frequencies of the Hebrew letters tuning explained. And again, this is healingfrequenciesmusic.com. And if you go over to where it says blog, and then you click on musical frequencies of the Hebrew letters, tuning explained. I'm not sure which page it's on, but you can always type that into the search box and it comes up. I talk a little bit about musical harmonics at the beginning. Then I give some examples of tuning. As a clarinetist, I deal with tuning all the time. Such a fun thing to do. Concert pitch and temperament, I don't go into the details of that on the blog post. I give a couple examples, but on this video, I'm going to give you a little bit more information on how that works. I put up this same chart and then a couple of other things, and then introduce how it works with the Hebrew letters. So that is the blog post that I'm referring to. So I encourage you to go to healingfrequenciesmusic.com. Read the blog post, and possibly before or at least after you listen to this, or listen to and or watch this video. One of the things that I tend to do is I have this cute little Bluetooth speaker that I just hook up to my computer, and I'll turn on a YouTube video, and I'll just carry this around the house with me if I'm working or something, and I can listen to YouTube videos. And I've found that very fascinating. Especially if you have a computer that hooks up to Bluetooth. As I introduce this, here's a book that was given to me by a friend. It's called How Equal Temperament Ruined Harmony. The author's name is Ross W. Duffin. Maybe you can see that a little bit better. Hopefully, on my screen it's showing it's backwards. I'm hoping you're not seeing it that way. This is a very technical book. Ross Duffin is a professor at Case Western Reserve University in the School of Music there. It's very technically related, but it's really wonderful as far as going through temperament. Who came up with temperament? It has musical examples in here where temperament was first introduced. Goes into keyboard tuning, a variety. There's even some cute jokes, ignoring the mammoth major third of equal temperament. Major thirds are wide to sharp in equal temperament, but they were just as bad in Pythagorean, which is one of the reasons they ignored them for the longest time. But I'm not going to get into all of that. So, here it explains what the harmonic series are, the different forms of temperament that have been introduced throughout history. So it's a wonderful book if you really want to delve into tuning and temperament. Again, it's very technical in nature, and you have to understand music theory at a pretty advanced level in order for this to make sense. But for you music geeks out there, this is a great tool for you. On that note, we're going to move on to our PowerPoint presentation. So I need to get that puppy up next, and we will move forward. So I'm going to share my screen one more time, and we're just going to start. I'm going to try to keep these fairly short so that you don't feel like you're listening to me forever and ever. So with that, share my screen again. And we will start the slideshow. And I'm going to move the picture to the bottom because I believe there is less information. I'll just see how far down it'll let me put it. Then we're going to do the slideshow from the beginning. And as usual, the curtain pulls back. It's just my favorite part of the slideshow. The title of this is Musical Frequencies of the Hebrew Letters, Tuning Explained. So I go into more detail here of how that works. I think I'd rather do this. What is tuning? It's a good question because it's really quite a deep answer. Tuning involves two separate factors. I left the W out. You know, I like to be kind of casual, but every once in a while you'll find a typo, so I apologize for the typo. Number one, temperament. The second is concert pitch. You'll learn a little bit more about those today. A temperament must be chosen before setting a concert pitch. And the specific frequencies will vary within a chosen musical temperament. And you're thinking, what does this have to do with the musical frequencies of the Hebrew letters? I'm getting there. But if I don't give you at least a little bit of background, then that won't make sense. Once a temperament is chosen, all notes within a specific concert pitch are adjusted to that temperament. And as I said in an earlier video, it's like going into a Microsoft Word document, highlighting the entire document, and then choosing one font. The moment you do that, all of the fonts in the entire document line up with whichever new font that you've chosen. So every word, every letter in there is now in that new font. Temperament does exactly the same thing. Concert pitch, they work differently, but when you choose a concert pitch, all of the other notes automatically adjust. So I'm going to explain a little bit more about temperament right here. Temperament adjusts the distance between notes. If you look at this cute little picture that I've got here, you're going to notice that they've got C to G, G to D, D to A to E. What they've done is, this is the circle of fifths. So F to C is a perfect fifth, C to G is a perfect fifth, G to D, and they've just gone all the way around because that's how they tune, is according to fifths. And you'll also see here, I need to go to the next slide in order for that. Each note of a scale is represented by a number. Here you'll see 1 through 12. There's 12 notes between C and C. And so this includes all of the sharp and all of the flat notes. The tick marks that you see here represent just intonation and equal temperament. They call it here, as you say, just tuning. ET is our form of, what we say equal temperament. Yes, ET did phone home in the 80s, but ET now means equal temperament. So you're going to see ET, every time I say ET, I'm meaning equal temperament. Had to throw that cute little joke in there. So you're going to notice here, things were slightly different. Right here, the inside numbers, I believe that's referring to equal temperament, what's on the inside. So equal temperament is like all of the numbers are equally spaced around the clock. The outside ticks would be like just intonation or the perfect fifths, which are beatless. So they're showing, again, equal temperament on the inside, just intonation on the outside, and you see how they are slightly different. E flat and D sharp are really not quite the same in just intonation, and depending on what key you're going to play in will determine where you place the note. It's all done by ear because the musician listens for the beating between the notes, especially when they're tuning it with other notes. So temperament is all about adjusting the distance from note to note. Concert pitch. This chart shows two different temperaments, equal, temperament, ET, and just. So here's the just, and here's equal temperament. And what I like about this chart is it shows the exact frequency so that you can see a side-by-side comparison of how that works. It also shows three different concert pitches. So we've got the just intonation right here, equal temperament here. We have a 440 concert pitch, a 432 concert pitch, and C equals 256. And you're going to notice if you look at the A, that's going to be closer to 426 concert pitch, which is slightly lower than 432. Interesting enough. That's if you are tuning from that particular C, which is the, I think it's going to be the octave below middle C. I'd have to look. I can't, I'm not positive on that one, so don't take my word for it. I need to go look at my chart to remember. I just know that 440 is the A above middle C. Well, yeah, it would be because 220 is the A below middle C. So 256 would be middle C. All right, I figured it out. Notice the changes in hertz between the two different temperaments, just and equal. And I'll point some of that out here in a second. The hertz numbers will vary based on the concert pitch and the temperament. So for example, let's take A440, which is our standard pitch right now, and I need to move this up. I might be moving this thing up a bunch. Here is equal temperament. You're going to notice the ratio. It's exactly the same for, I can't even read all of that. But so anyway, there's the ratio here. The distance between each note is mathematically equal. So A440, the A above middle C is going to be 440. Middle C is going to be 261. In 432, the A above middle C is going to be 432 hertz. Middle C is going to be 256.87 hertz. On the other hand, if you're tuning starting with middle C at 256 hertz, you're going to be around 430 hertz for the A above middle C. So depending on the concert pitch and the temperament used, these numbers, all of these hertz are going to be slightly adjusted depending on your pitch. On your temperament as well as your concert pitch. Now let's go over here and look at the just intervals. Here are the ratios they show. Let's take a look at the A440 concert pitch. Again, so that's keeping across the board. This is pretty much the same other than the very last one where this is based on C, not A, which is why this number is slightly different than this number, because the ratios are going to be different because you're tuning from C rather than A, if that makes any sense. You're going to notice on the just scale, let's pick a different note. Let's take a look at C right at the top, because this is based on A. You have 264 hertz in the just scale, right there, for a middle C. In the equal tempered scale, it's 261.63 hertz. Slightly lower in the equal tempered scale than it is in the just scale. In the 432, it's 259.20 in the just scale, but in the equal tempered scale, it's 256. Now let's take a look at the next note, D. In the just scale, the D right above middle C is 293.33 hertz. Over here, it's 293.66. So you can already tell the difference. There's a bigger difference between 264 and 261 than there is 293 to 293. So you can tell equal tempered, they're equal. Here, the distances between the notes are going to vary. Hopefully that makes sense. And, feel free to freeze this screen, take a screenshot so that you can look at it a little bit more carefully. I don't remember where I found this, but I did find it online. I did not create this one myself. But the whole point in looking at concert pitch, it's all going to differ depending on what temperament you're in, because that will determine, as in this case, whether this C is 264 hertz or 261 hertz. There's mean tones. There's probably 22, 23, upwards of 30 different temperaments that we know have been used over time. We have tuning forks, we have tuning manuals, so we know that there's a lot of different temperaments. Equal temperament is fairly new since the Industrial Revolution, but a variety of temperaments were used before that. And we know that because we have artifacts and tuning manuals and paperwork to show us that that's what they had. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. The biggest thing is this is the same note. Equal temperament here, A440, is the same note as the just 440. Slightly different. This one's going to be sharper. This 264 is going to be sharper than 261. Higher numbers are higher frequencies. So keep that in mind. That's important to remember as we look at frequencies in the Hebrew letters. So I felt it's important to really press that point here. It's impossible to say things like, this is the key of David, when concert pitch was not a thing during ancient times. Concert pitch was really only established as we know it today once we had electronic means to determine, oh, this is A432, oh, this is A440, oh, this is A444. Before that, they would figure out what note they wanted to tune to, and then they would use different temperaments to tune the rest. So concert pitch really is a fairly new term. Temperament was the focus, not the pitch. Instruments were tuned by intervals, the distance from one note to the next. A first note was set, and very much like concert pitch, other notes were tuned from the original note. That's how we tune concert pitch now. But again, now that we have the electronic means and things from the Industrial Revolution to measure and actually find ways to measure things, we're putting terminology to things that were used thousands of years ago. Without tuning devices of our modern day, it was nearly impossible to stay in the same tuning on a daily basis. Every one of us knows if you're a guitar player and you're going to play, you're going to pull out one of those electronic tuners on your phone, you're going to play a note and you're going to tune the rest of your instrument to that note. You play in a band, you play in an orchestra, you're always going to tune beforehand. Well, what did people do when they didn't have access to do this? 200, well, probably 300, 400, 500, 1,000, 1,500 years ago, if they didn't have some device to remind them what the tuning note is, they just had to do it naturally by what they felt was coming from them that day. They might be out in the field and a guy with a lyre, he tunes his note, he'll sing a note and he wants to tune it to whatever he's singing. Very possible that they did that. I mean, they might have set one string and then tuned all the other strings according to whatever that one string happened to be resonating on that particular day. Because we all know that when you're involving strings and natural materials, humidity and temperature are going to affect tuning. I think I said that in the last video. How do we know this information is accurate? I mean, I'm not just pulling this stuff out of the air. I mean, some of the things I'm going through, here I say ethnomusicologists have uncovered ancient instruments. When I was a music major, I really didn't care about this stuff. That sounds really crazy. I was a performer. I really wanted to learn the basics of performing. And as I said before, you have musicologists, music historians, ethnomusicologists. Even though they had to learn and study an instrument, their focus was not on being perfect on that instrument. Their focus is generally on the history or theory of music, and people delve into one or the other. Generally, well, I don't know any reputable ethnomusicologist or music historian or music theorist that doesn't read music and understand the inner workings of music from a pretty deep level. In order to do that, you still need training in the deep knowledge of music, if that makes any sense. So we have reconstruction of those instruments that have been uncovered. They show that simple ratios were used in tuning. Before we had the means of electronically creating pitches and measuring things, it's whatever was around in nature that people used to tune to. Who knows? Maybe there's a bird sitting off in a tree and it whistled the same song every day, and he would come into the field, and King David might have said, "Oh, I really like that, what that bird is singing," and he would tune his lyre or his harp to the bird and then sing along with the bird. We don't know that, but there would be some way that they would tune their instruments in simple ratios, because what was used, because you could hear the beating between the intervals if it was out of tune. Sumerian tablets from the time of David provide instructions on how to tune lyres. And I believe I mentioned this last time. Richard Dumbrell is a lead researcher and specialist in ancient music. In fact, he's probably the foremost authority on ancient music and musical instruments. He spent his whole life researching this. And so I definitely trust his research, more so than someone who's really not studied it that much. And he has a very deep understanding of tuning practices, temperaments, and even a lot of math, that he was able to figure some things out that I'm not sure I want to do. But although it's impossible to be exact, during the reconstruction process that Richard Dumbrell did, and he has got a whole book. I might even have a copy of it here. Let me pull it out. I'm going to stop. No, I'm not going to stop sharing. I'll show it to you at the end. Again, although it's impossible to be exact, during the reconstruction process, it was determined that these instruments were tuned slightly lower than our standard A440. If you were to assign a concert pitch to it, he said, "Oh, the main tuning note is a D at so many hertz." Well, I went and looked it up, and it was probably closer to 439 than it was 440, but it definitely was not a 444. It was too low for that. It is known that the Hebrew people interacted with many cultures. Like today, they shared information. That's evident in archaeological digs via artifacts. Temperament in the Hebrew culture. We have the ability to exactly tune the distance between intervals because of modern tuning devices. Before the Industrial Revolution, temperament was adjusted by ear, based on the desire of a specific musician or ensemble. Pythagorean temperament, which is based on simple ratios, was a natural method of tuning. It was the easiest, again, all based on intervals that you could actually hear if it was in tune. If you play a perfect fifth, two notes together, for example, like a C and a G, or a D flat and an A flat, or a D and an A, or an E flat and a B flat, or E and B, those are all perfect fifths. So you would tune the two notes together, and you could hear the wah, 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 wah. And as soon as they would lock in, then the beating would go away. That's how they tune the instruments, and that's how piano tuners do it now. The only difference is our perfect fifths on the piano are like 2 or 3 beats less. So I think they're flat, slightly flat. so that the other notes can be tuned and not sound as horrific. Anyway, just intonation is fine tuning of specific notes depending on the notes utilized in a song. And everything is performer preference. The thing, you know, I remember reading in this book, How Equal Temperament Ruined Harmony, and Why Should You Care, is there's a lot discussed in here about the preference of the performer. And that we become lazy with equal temperament and thinking, oh, equal temperament is just right. But really good musicians are going to listen across an ensemble and tune according to intervals and listen for the beating so that there is none. In order to do that, you have to leave an equal temperament to make it work. And wind players and string players have the ability to make an adjustment in temperament, whereas keyboard instruments don't in the middle of a performance. So again, everything was based on performer preference, what they liked in the sound. Some of them liked certain keys and certain things slightly edgy because it provided a certain feel to the music when they did that. Ancients used the pentatonic scale as a mainstay. And I believe here's a picture of the pentatonic scale. The pentatonic, meaning 5-note scale, is the most common because it utilizes simple ratios. This scale fits naturally within the voice and is heavily utilized in music throughout history. The major scale is also evident from the time of Pythagoras. And again, the book, How Equal Temperament Ruined Harmony, spends a lot of time taking a look at Pythagorean temperament and how that looks compared to equal temperament. So you see here in this picture, really what it is, it's like taking a C, D, E, and then skipping the F and going G, A, skipping the B, and then back to the C. So basically you have a major second here, a major second there, a minor third from E to G, another major second, and minor third. So a pentatonic scale is made up of a combination of major seconds and minor thirds. Now, if you take the black keys, what is it? I have to look at the, you're going to have a major second, major second, minor third, major second, and minor third. So if you start on the F sharp and play all the black notes this way, that's a natural pentatonic scale. And this is the formula for a pentatonic scale. Major second, minor third, major second, minor third. And again, it was just I don't understand it, but that's okay. They have evidence that this scale has been in existence from as far back as they can determine. Adding all the pieces. We have Pythagorean and just intonation. We have the tuning practices based on ancient artifacts. We have the Hebrew culture, which I discussed in the first video in the series. And we have the importance of the Hebrew letters and what we know about natural tendencies of how things function. So tuning, if we take a look at this column here, they tuned by intervals, concert pitch not yet understood, or they just didn't use the term. I mean, because their concert pitch literally means you take one note and you tune all the other notes to that particular note. That's a concert pitch. We understand that now, but back in 1000 BC, when Pythagoras first came up with this, they didn't look at it in that way. It was all done by ear. There was no other way that they could do it unless they had a device that they checked every time, which in the 1500s, 1400s, 1300s, 1600s, it might be the town bell or something that everybody could just listen to and would know how to tune. The temperaments that were most popular, because they were natural tunings or natural temperaments, were Pythagorean and just intonation, because they're based on natural intervals that you can hear quite easily, because remember, tuning is done by ear. So you've got the tuning done by ear using the temperaments that all fall into natural laws, the natural laws of harmonics, the natural law of entrainment. And I added divine revelation in here because people often had revelation about things, and from what I've been able to see, the divine revelation eventually matches all of this. Entrainment literally means that you have two competing frequencies, and then the weaker frequency will always match the stronger frequency. And I believe I've talked about that in another video, so I'm not going into that again here. How it all connects. We have the Hebrew letters are said to be living according to tradition. According to tradition. There we go, take two. Gematria involves a value and formula used for various purposes, which I will go over in the next video. Musical frequencies can be assigned to each Hebrew letter, and the laws of harmonics are part of the overall picture. And so you see, I made somewhat of a pie chart. You have the Hebrew letter here, which you're looking at the meaning of each letter, and the shape of each letter also is important in the Hebrew culture. Then you have the gematria, which is a value and a formula. In modern terms, we call this numerology, but the Hebrew culture has assigned the name gematria to it. Then you have over here the actual musical frequency, which involves both temperament and concert pitch. Then you have harmonics, which involve natural laws and then physics in general. It's going to be a lot of math involved in things. And Pythagoras, amazingly enough, introduced a lot of things about math that, not that it didn't exist, but someone actually put a name to it. This is what we know now. The ancients understood tuning practices based on adjusting intervals, which is the temperament. When you adjust intervals, you're dealing with temperament. Concert pitch was not something ancients thought about or understood as we do today. What they would do is they would set a note, which is the concert pitch. Then they would tune all the other notes based off that beginning note. This is where temperament and concert pitch probably kind of melded together at that time, because they really, one has to work with the other. They work hand in hand. Tuning before technology was done by ear and fit within the natural laws of harmonics. Basically, Pythagoras' discovery of simple ratios. You take a string, you cut it in half, you get an octave. You take a string, you cut it in thirds, and I believe that's the perfect fifth. I have to go look at the ratios because I don't have that part memorized. More than likely, tuning adjustments varied. We have evidence of that from the time tuning forks were invented. So I'm assuming that up until that point, because that's how people functioned, before we actually have written evidence, it was probably done that way before, even though there may not be evidence, or if there is, we still have yet to understand it. Prior to tuning forks, ancients found other natural methods to tune the main note, what we call concert pitch. And here's how interesting. When starting from number 1 and assigning it to a hertz, which is a specific frequency, a specific note, then using simple Pythagorean ratios to determine all of the other pitches, the numbers fit within the A432 concert pitch, what we would assign as the A432 concert pitch. Now remember, before that, this has been around for ages, but we now call it the A432 concert pitch. This is one reason it's said to be a natural concert pitch. Many ancient texts refer to the statement, as above, so below. From the time Earth existed, natural laws appear to be in place, and people understood those natural laws because they entrain with them. And I think I said in one of the videos, out of curiosity, I wanted to see if voices fell into natural concert pitches. So I went onto YouTube and listened to 32 YouTube videos, tried to find people from Africa, African tribes, Native Americans who were just sitting down and singing, or people singing without the aid of an instrument accompanying them, just to see where the voice tends to just start. If you had to assign, so what I would do is I'd listened to the entire song and had my tuner, which registered the exact hertz, and then I would start writing down hertz as they would show up on my tuner for each one, and then you go back and look, almost all of them fit within the 432 concert pitch. 2 of them were lower than 432. So it seems to me that we tend to just gravitate to what's in nature. I believe that this is one of the reasons why choirs tend to go flat, is because we're singing at higher concert pitches than what seems to be natural in the earth. Just throwing that out there. Numbers across the board, sacred geometry, the Fibonacci series, pi, phi, blah, 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 they line up with the A432 concert pitch in Pythagorean tuning. I don't think that's a coincidence. When following the number trail, the musical frequencies of the Hebrew letters fall within the A432 concert pitch and perfectly match the musical harmonic series. Here is a chart that I put together. I sat down and figured it out for all the sharps and flats. I had all the regular notes, but I didn't have C sharp or D flat. And there is I can't even remember, a mathematical formula that someone gave me to figure it out. I have it written down, but I'm not sure that I could say now what it was, but I had this checked, and so I know it's accurate. This is starting with the number 1. Now, the lowest note on the piano, I believe, is 27 hertz. So when you take the note C, for example, and you double it, you get the next octave higher. Let me get my little mousey to work. Then you double it again. Then you double. You keep doubling. Across here shows these are all the different C's doubled. So the C above middle C is 512 hertz when you start with C as 1 hertz. Then you keep going down. So for example, the perfect fifth above C, according to the ratios, Pythagorean ratios, would be 1.5 hertz. As you keep doubling that, you're going to get this is the G. Can't quite do it. There's the G that's right above middle C. Now notice that the A above middle C is 432. That's why we call it A432, because when you tune using Pythagorean ratios, that A to 432, all of these other notes automatically fit within these numbers. Now again, if I were to change this to equal temperament, I could still have 432, but every one of these numbers are going to be slightly different because equal temperament is equal distance. This is not necessarily the case. So again, this is the chart that I put together. Feel free to take a screenshot of this so that you have it. I do include it in the materials that I sell on Healing Frequencies music that have to do with the musical frequencies of the Hebrew letters. This chart plus the one that's in 444 are included because I know a lot of people like A444 tuning. And I'm like, whoa, dude. Taught in public school long enough that dude just became a really nice word to use. When information is reported such as A444 is the key of David, there should be an evidence trail to follow. Now, when I first introduced this information to someone, they said, well, why aren't the healing frequencies, the frequencies of the Hebrew letters in 444? I'm like, I don't know. I just followed the trail where it went, and it led to the A432. So I don't have a problem with the A444 concert pitch, but for someone to say that it's the key of David, at this time, there is no evidence to show that, especially when you have Richard Dumbrill, who is doing all this research and reconstructing lyres from the time of David, and they have a tuning manual that's on a cuneiform tablet. All of that stuff, in doing all the math and everything associated with it, it comes to their finding somewhere slightly below 440, but not quite. 444 is enough higher that it just doesn't seem, there's not enough evidence to show that there's anything about A444 that matches the natural frequencies and things within the earth itself. We may receive special knowledge, what some call revelation, but unless it lines up with the as above, so below principle, is to sit on a shelf until evidence appears. So I look at this thinking, okay, what's here seems to be a mirror of what's above. So we're going to find a correlation between the two things. So whatever I receive revelation on something, I look for that connection. If it's not there, I just let it sit. If it never appears, great. So what I'm saying is, at this time, there is no evidence about A444 being the key of David. We find that much of the revelation, let me say that one more time. We find that much of the revelation received by the ancients fits within natural laws. Therefore, it makes sense that what we find will follow those same laws, which I basically just said that. Our current evidence, and we're going back to this again, the musical frequencies of the Hebrew letters are based on the 432 concert pitch using Pythagorean ratios. Remember what I said before. Pythagorean ratios are the natural ratios found within Earth, the Earth's atmosphere, within everything that we see where we are. So I found that fascinating. I did not go looking for that. It just happened, if you want to call it that. The musical frequencies of the Hebrew letters also follow the laws of harmonics, which I shared that information in the very first video, so I'm not going to do it again here. There is a fundamental frequency for each Hebrew letter. I had an expectation that I was going to have some wonderful little melodies and all of these things, but now that I look at it, I realize why that expectation was wonky, and I believe, because I went into it with an expectation, that it took me longer to get the information or to see the correct answer, because in reality, when you're doing research like this, it's important to go in with zero expectations, because that way you don't miss things that are staring at you in the face. So there is a fundamental frequency for each Hebrew letter that allows musicians to create songs according to inspiration. I doubt that King David would have sung the same melody when he was out worshiping every time. I mean, he might have, but I don't think that would happen all of the time. Just like us, the human species now, we do a lot via improvisation. Prior to the year 1000 AD, musical notation did not exist as we know it. So musicians either learned something by rote or they improvised. But I'm going to throw a monkey wrench in this. There is evidence of an early form of musical notation called chironomy, which is via hand signals. And you can see this in Egyptian hieroglyphs. And for the longest time, they couldn't figure out, and I should have put a picture here, but I have to go look for it again. They got, you go into tombs and you go into all these places and you see, these Egyptians with these instruments that are sitting there, and there's someone standing in front of each of the instruments with their hands in certain positions. They might be like this, or they might be like this. And they finally realized that those, because they're directing the musicians, and some matched and some didn't, that those instrumentalists knew what pitch to play on their instrument based on the hand signal. Very fascinating. It was only recently that I found this, and it was before I actually did the blog post. Now our version is solfege. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. That is our version of chironomy today. So some further ponderings. We know the Hebrews intermixed with other cultures. There's plenty of evidence of that. Several languages came out of similar looking pictographs. And you can see that if you go online and you Google the Hebrew letters, then they're going to put it next to the different cultures and the original pictograph and how similar they all were. And then they eventually evolved into letters that look similar and even sound the same. We live in America. I mean, I live in America, and think of how many cultures have intermixed in this country to bring out our own culture. There isn't any reason to believe that ancient cultures didn't also function the same way, because we are social societies. So if pictographs equal languages, it's possible musical pitches might be represented by hand positions, as I described earlier through chironomy. The Kodai system, as I mentioned before, the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, that is a version of chironomy. The Hebrew language is an ancient language that's still used today. Why is it that their culture puts so much weight on the letters? And they have for a very, very long time. Inquiring minds wanted to know. According to tradition, there are many layers within the Hebrew language: musical language, healing properties, gematria meanings, everything. That's one of the reasons why gematria was so important, because it meant something at a different level than the actual word, and they all connected. So the next installment is going to focus on the Hebrew gematria. What is it? How does it relate to music? How does it relate to the laws of harmonics? And what's gematria all about, and why is it important to the Hebrew culture? So that's going to be part 3. So for more information and updates, so that you can keep updated, of course, my website, healingfrequenciesmusic.com. And obviously you're viewing this from the YouTube channel. So bebop on over to healingfrequenciesmusic.com. But before you do that, subscribe to Healing Frequencies Music YouTube channel, because as soon as I upload a new video, you'll get a notification, new video upload, and then you can go check it out. If you register for the newsletter directly on the website, you get a lot of free stuff. And generally, if I do specials, I always announce it to the to the newsletter people first. And then in the event that people who are on the newsletter don't take part in the specials, I open it up to the general population. But that's where I always introduce everything first. Then you subscribe to the blog. So when you do that, then you automatically get a notification every time a new blog post is up. You subscribe to the YouTube channel, then you automatically get notification of every time I put a video up about one of the blog posts. I think we're having some issues with my little mouser. And I believe that is the last one. Yep. So we're going to escape, and we are going to stop sharing. Stop share right there. Okay. So one of the things that I wanted to show you was this article. I believe I'm just going to pull out the page because it's kind of, I don't want to hold up the whole book. It's called The Truth About Babylonian Music by Richard Dumbrell. I don't know if you can see that. He actually sent this to me, sent him a couple of emails. It was copyright in 2017. In the article, he discusses, I'm looking at the table of contents, the tuning text of the cuneiform tablet. He goes through, again, very technical details on how the instrument was tuned, the translation of the cuneiform tablet, and then how that translates to how the lyre was tuned. He actually has a picture, and I could probably hold this up to you today, in that book showing how it was tuned. There's the original language, there's the translations of the notes, and that's the information on the cuneiform tablet. So that's how we know how those lyres were tuned from the time of David. And because there's, he took, measured string tensions, knew exactly, based on natural laws, that if you want a certain frequency, you're going to have a certain winding of the strings. All you have to do is look at a piano string and notice all the ones at the bottom of the piano are much thicker and more tightly wound than the ones at the very top end of the piano. So if you want lower notes, you got to have thicker strings. And back that time, they used animal guts. And so that, all right, in order to tune a fifth lower, then you're going to have a certain thickness of that string in order to get that fifth lower. Otherwise, it's going to be too high. So you take all of those things, you do all the mathematics, and you can figure out how to tune an instrument according to the instructions on this cuneiform tablet. And in that process, it was determined that the concert pitch was closer to 439, I believe. I'd have to go. I do give a link to that YouTube discussion. I think it's in 5 or 6. I don't think it's in this one, but it was in the first of the series, where I give a link to his YouTube video where he actually talks about tuning the lyre. Again, it's very technical, hard to understand, but if that is something that you're interested in, I encourage you, go check out what I say. Don't take everything that I say as, ooh, this is it. But as a person who has studied music, that's what my degrees are in, I can answer the questions about concert pitch, about temperament, about tuning, the historical aspects of how things were done. And so leaving it at that, I do believe that the musical frequencies of the Hebrew letters are in the A432 concert pitch as we know it today, based on Pythagorean tuning, which would make total sense based on the natural laws of harmonics and natural laws in general. That is the connecting piece. So until next time, enjoy this video. Make sure you go back and watch the first part about the musical harmonic series, and make sure you subscribe to the channel so you get more. All right, on that note, we're going to call her quits, and Zoe will say goodbye. Zoe, you want to say goodbye? As I said, we always keep this kind of flexible. She's too tired and just wants to sleep. All right, see you later. Bye.